Thanks for everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Bully Resistance Show. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that there's two ways that you can actually help me continue the fight against bullying in the public schools. First, if you haven't subscribed to the Bully Resistance Show, it doesn't cost you anything. All you have to do is just go to my website at www.davebond.org, and you'll see the banner and that says subscribe, and all you have to do is just click on that. The second way that you can help, you can be a monthly sponsor as low as $4 per month, and in return, you're going to get a free weekly digital download of a track of mine or a song of mine from the CDs that I have out, and also a monthly digital download CD. Now this way, you're not just giving money away, but you're getting something in return. So all you have to do is just go to my website at www.davebond.org, scroll down and click on the Patreon banner, and it's going to take you to get you or to give you some more information about that. So with no further ado, sit back and enjoy the next Bully Resistance Show. The Bully Resistance Show is brought to you by Parkersburg Jiu-Jitsu, a Pedro Sauer affiliate located in Vienna, West Virginia. Go to parkersburgbjj.com, or you can call 740-591-2706. And if you mention the Bully Resistance Show, you're going to receive 2 free weeks of training in self-defense and also a private lesson from one of our instructors. Restrictions do apply. The Bully Resistance Show is brought to you by Planet Fitness, located in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and Marietta, Ohio. They strive to create a workout environment where everyone feels accepted and respected. That's why at Planet Fitness in Parkersburg and Marietta, they take care to make sure their club is clean and welcoming. Their staff is friendly. There's certified trainers. Everything's there. So whether you're a first-time gym user or a fitness veteran, you always have a home in their judgment-free zone.
Welcome, everyone, to the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells, nationally known smooth jazz artist, CEO and co-founder of the Chocolate Jazz Foundation, and the co-host of a 2-hour syndicated radio program called Chocolate Jazz Radio. Bully Resistance is a weekly 1-hour show that's a motivational, informative, and inspirational program. We will have interviews with musicians, actors, government officials, politicians, psychologists, counselors, and just average day citizens. Of course, the topics will include making right choices, never giving up desire, discipline, determination, bullying in public schools, the workplace, and in your community, bully resistance and prevention, self-defense, jiu-jitsu, and current affairs, and much, much more. And if you're ready, we are. Here's your host, David Wells.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Bully Resistance Show. My name is David, and today we have a special guest who's been a professional voice actor for over 10 years. And in 2018, she received the SOVAS Award, which was actually held at the Warner Brothers studio in LA. And also, she has her own podcast called Audio Branding. So at this time, I want to introduce Jodi Krangle, to the Bully Resistance Show. Did I pronounce? Okay.
You did, yeah.
So, Jodi, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much.
Hey, listen, before we get started, can you just give the listeners a little bit more background of who you are, where you were born and raised, and actually how you got started in voice acting?
Oh, okay. That's a long question. Okay. Well, I have, I've grown up in the Toronto area. That's I'm north of the city right now, and I guess I've been a singer all my life. So, you know, when my parents would have been telling us bedtime stories, we were having sing-along instead. My mom is a singer and my dad plays guitar. So, so that was kind of our,
right.
My sister and I. So, the two of us would have like a, you know, all of us, the family would have a sing-along, and we'd have a wonderful time. It wasn't story time, it was singing time.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'll mention this to you.
Mm-hmm.
My experience, and I don't mean to go on tangents, but
okay.
I performed at a jazz festival in Toronto.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, I visited Canada a few times. And my experience, this was like one of my second or third times coming across the border. Mm-hmm. We set up a concert, and the buyer was talking to me, and he said, "Now, when you come in across the border, you just let them know that you're there watching the leaves turn, or just for sightseeing and everything else." I said, "Okay, I can do that."
Yeah.
And I guess there's different reasons because of business and transactions, everything else that goes on with that whole thing. So anyway, what happened is that I got off the airplane and I came to customs, and of course the only thing I had was my trumpet. And they said, "Okay, well, what's the bag that you have?" I said, "Well, it's trumpets." They go, "Are you here to do business?" I said, "No, I'm just here to practice. I mean, this is just like a hobby, and I take it wherever I go."
Sure.
And they said, you're not here selling CDs or anything else. And I said, no. And so anyway, make a long story short, my luggage didn't come in at that time. And they said, just go ahead and go out to eat and then come back and we'll have your luggage, within an hour or two. Mm-hmm. So I go ahead and, the buyer, we went out for lunch and we came back, and we were actually, greeted by customs at the very front door of the airport. Mm-hmm. And they said, "Are you Mr. Wells?" I said, "Yes." They said, "Follow me." So anyway, we go into a room. My luggage was all over the counter.
Oh my goodness.
And it was just spread out. And my wife put the credit card machine, my CDs in my luggage, and I thought she was going to go ahead and mail them.
Oh.
And so it seems like ever since then, every time I come across the border, they always pull me aside, and I must be red listed or blacklisted or something, But
well, you could be banned, so it could be a lot worse. I mean, yeah, it happens the other way around too. I actually do have a trade visa with the U.S. at this point.
Oh, you do?
Yep. I have gone ahead and gotten that because I do a lot of business with U.S. clients. And in my voiceover business, I do have to go across the border on occasion. And while I don't usually go there specifically to work, I may have a client who needs something while I'm there. So it makes sense.
Okay. That's nice. Let me ask you this. Did you, before I interrupted you, did you tell us how you got started in voice acting?
I never got that far.
Sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I guess the point is basically that I've always really liked using my voice, probably like you've always loved music, Right. Yeah, so it's always been a part of my life. And I've done a whole bunch of different things, from selling computer hardware when, in the 90s when it was, not something women did. And,
right.
Doing things like search engine optimization and internet marketing when the internet was brand new. And eventually I got really bored with that and just wanted to do something else. And previously in 95 and 96, I had done some volunteer work for the CNIB, which is the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. And we were doing books on tape, and it really was tape at the time. It was reel to reel. And
right.
I loved it. I had a blast, and I even loved the technology of it almost more than I liked doing the voicing. So,
wow, okay.
Yeah, it was fun. So I did that for, around a year, and then I had to let that go, and I was still doing other things. It took a little bit of percolating in the back of my brain for a while before I realized that was something maybe I could do. And then finally I got so bored with internet marketing because Google became the only game in town. There was all sorts of other search engines, but eventually they all dropped off and Google was the only one left. And I just found that boring. So I wanted to do something else, and I thought of voiceovers, and that was in 2007. So I have always spent a lot of my time online, and the first thing I did was look online and get advice from people on message boards, which still existed at the time.
Okay.
And then, after that, Facebook, and it just kind of went from there.
Let me mention this too. Before we go into bullying and talk about bullying a little bit, and also there's some statistics that I saw about bullying in Canada that I think it might be interesting to you. But what I want to do first, I want to talk more about your career, and but I want to take a real quick listen. Let's all take a quick listen to this voice audition that you sent me a couple days ago.
Travel is much more than an itinerary. It has the power to open minds, build connections, and change the world around us. Savor the journey. Holland America Cruises. Finally, an app that lets you invest like this without paying commissions to guys like these. Robinhood is changing the way you do money. A kind smile and our signature warm cookie on arrival. That's how all of our guests start their stay. Doubletree by Hilton, where a warm welcome awaits 25 years later. Water.org has provided 22 million people access to safe water and sanitation, connecting tens of thousands of the best, brightest, and most innovative in the video game industry. Subscribe at e3expo.com for updates and announcements. Imagine your own Prince Charming. Strong, intelligent, thoughtful. But you have Bob. Bob's fine. Yuck.
Jodi, the first time that I heard you or heard this audition, it was just like, you're so professional. and your voice, your voice has a good range. I mean, like when I was talking about the cruise, it was just like, gosh, this voice is wanting me to go on the cruise,
Yeah.
And then you
You
switch
wouldn't want
it
to
up.
do that
That's
now.
more of a, yeah, I know.
Just saying.
But with the coronavirus going on.
Also, it's a demo. So it's a series of potential spots, I guess, and it's kind of what you would call a voiceover business card. I guess this is kind of what voiceover people pass around to people to make sure that whoever is interested in hiring them knows what they're capable of.
Okay, now do you have somebody representing you then?
Oh, I have a lot of people representing me. Yeah.
Okay. Then the reason why I'm asking is this: can you tell me the process that you go through from beginning to the end, starting with your agent getting a call from a buyer? I mean, what happens next?
Well, it isn't always from an agent because of the way that voiceovers work these days. A lot of it is online. So in our current situation, I basically have been talking to myself in my padded box for I don't know how many years. And, our current situation just means I do that the same way.
Right.
But ultimately, whoever contacts me, and it could be direct from a client, it could be an ad agency or a video production company, it could be an agent. It could be from what they call a pay-to-play, which is a directory that you pay to be a part of, and then you get auditions from that directory. And generally, it depends on how they've contacted me. If it's an agent, they're asking for an audition. If it's a pay-to-play, they're usually asking for an audition, but some people will directly contact you through that directory. If a client is reaching out directly, it's more likely that they've already sort of made their decision. So they're either asking me to do the job, or I'm doing an audition, but only against 2 or 3 other people. So it's almost better for me if I get directly contacted through my website. So SEO and internet marketing is still huge.
Okay. So when you get that call, what's the time frame that they want you to complete the project? Is it just like that week, or is it like a month? I mean, what's the process there?
Oh my goodness. It could be a day. It could be an hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Advertising works really fast. And especially these days, because it's all remote. generally it's all remote, even before any of the craziness we're going through right now. It moves really fast. Advertising agencies, video production, they all of their clients want this done really fast. So Go ahead.
Well, it's a big difference between putting a CD project, because I've been working on a CD project for over a year.
Yeah.
And it's just getting all the musicians, and so that's why I was curious. And when you're saying, well, they might want it in an hour or that day, that's just like, oh my gosh, man! It takes me a day just to get everything set up. You know?
Well, I mean, I have the setup already done, so that in and of itself isn't going to prevent me from getting them what they need. And sometimes they want a live directed session, in which case I have a whole bunch of remote options for them to connect with me and then record on their end. And like I can record here, obviously, and it can move really fast, but that's part of my job. It's part of my career. It's what I do. So I have to get them what they need fast. And that means I have to be really good at communication. And I need to be able to get the tone of what they're after from the script they've sent me fast. Generally, if I hear the music they're going to use on top of my voiceover, I can get there really, really quickly. Because as a musician, and you probably know this, when you hear music, it sort of informs the tone that you speak in.
Right, it does. So tell me the difference between voiceovers and then a voice actor. Is there any difference at all?
I think they're just really two labels of the same thing. But it sort of depends on what kind of genre you're in. Voiceovers really should be called voice under. Because the general idea is that you are not trying to take away from what's on the screen, or, you're trying to add to it. So you're adding to visuals, you're not taking away from it. And in a radio commercial, that's something different, because it's all theater of the mind. And that is, again, I think that's where acting comes in. But even if you're not talking about audiobooks or animation or video games or anything like that you really would think would be acting, I think that voiceovers in general, it's an acting medium, because I'm sitting here in a 5x4 booth looking at a monitor in a padded room, talking in front of a microphone with a pair of headphones on my head. This is as artificial as it gets, right? And you have to speak a script as if you're talking to someone and answering a question. So there really has to be some kind of internal theater of the mind going on for you to make that sound real. That is acting.
Right. Wow. I'm not for sure if you know this, but I during the school year I do a lot of school assemblies, and there's one thing I mention at every school, and this is I believe this, that I believe everyone has a special gift or talent. Not everyone wants to be a professional musician or an actor or comedian or a professional athlete, and let alone a professional jiu-jitsu athlete, which I've actually interviewed which was different.
Wow.
But, but everything that we do in life is really, it's determined by the choices that we make. The choices that we make will either lead us closer or further away from our dreams. And that's one of the things I mentioned. But also we have, with the gift or the talent that we have a choice either just to be average, or we have a choice to be successful at anything. Nothing is ever easy. And I'll mention this to you. I've talked with so many professionals in regards, probably mostly musicians, and then also I had an interview with a comedian. His name was Sinbad, and even though I enjoy performing. And I enjoy traveling, everything else, there's always some disadvantages, or there's pros and cons in everything that we do. What is, that being said, what is one of the cons in being a voice actor?
Well, I love it.
That you prefer not to deal with.
I do love it. So in general, honestly, anything that would be a con for me wouldn't weigh in all that heavily. But
right. I mean, is it the business side of it? Do you like that?
I love it all. There's some administrivia that maybe I could do without, but then again, there's all sorts of ways to outsource this. So if I really, really hate something, like if I'm doing a longer production of something and I really don't want to do the editing, the audio editing, I'll pass that off to someone, and I will pay them for their time, and I'll be very grateful that they took that off my hands, because that way I was freed up to do something I really wanted to do. So I've become kind of good at figuring out what I really like doing and farming out the rest to other people who enjoy doing what I don't like doing. And not being afraid of outsourcing. The only thing that I would say is a sort of con as far as voiceover is concerned would be that it's kind of a lonely profession, in that you spend all your days in a studio or in your office or, wherever you happen to be recording, on a computer or in your studio, and you generally don't see humans for a little while.
Yeah, I understand. I do understand.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I guess, being a recording artist. You're constantly recording and doing your best to make a living that way, but it can be very lonely.
Right. Well, my thing is that when I go on the road, I get to the destination, and then I'll go ahead and we'll get set up, and we'll go ahead and do a sound check, and then we'll do our concert, and then we'll go straight to the hotel. Mm-hmm. And there's no really any getting together with anybody else and, having dinner or anything else. And then we go to a different location. And then when I'm here, I've had several booking agents, and the problem that I'm having, that I had, because I do the bookings now myself, mm-hmm. is that the booking agents, they didn't want to make calls. They wanted to go ahead and take the calls, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They don't want to get on the phone and,
Yeah, they want it all to come to them, yeah.
Right, so bookings were few and far between unless you got on the phones. And I'll tell you this, I can't tell you how many no's I get a month. Mm-hmm. With they're not interested in everything else, and that's probably the biggest. If I had somebody, or if I was able to, if bookings were just coming in, I would be like on vacation. Mm-hmm. But that's the biggest downfall for me is bookings, and then dealing with the money and everything else. And because back in the smooth jazz days, of course you've heard of Kenny G, mm-hmm. right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, when smooth jazz was big and strong, things were doing well for me and everything else. And then what made it even worse is that how people purchased music and listened to music. That devastated 90% of all the artists. Mm-hmm. And so we had to be on the road more. But anyway, let me ask you this. What you mentioned in an email that it took 2.5 years until you were actually able to start making a viable income. What happened when things changed, when you were able to make a living? Did you land a contract, or you got your name out there, or what happened where you were able to make a good income?
Well, it takes some time in this business to just get established. First of all, to know what you're doing. Because,
right.
You don't just, it may look like all you're doing is reading words off a page, but the idea is that you're supposed to make it sound like you're not reading and make it sound authentic and real and actually sell the product without selling the product. So,
right.
There is a fair amount of training that actually goes into that. So first you get a coach, then you figure out your website, then you get your name out there, you get a demo, you go and get business and start doing what you need to do to get the jobs. And with this business, people, you're not going to get an agent in the first year that you're working. That's just not going to happen,
right.
Especially now, because agents want to know that you're a bookable product. They don't want to take on someone who's just going to sit on the roster and wait there and languish,
Sure.
They want someone who's a moneymaker. That's what everyone wants, right? So
right.
You have to go out and make the money, and it is a business. I'm not saying anything against people who really love the acting, and that's why they're doing this, and they're doing it for animation and video games, and they're living in LA and they have access to all of that. And that's wonderful. I applaud them, and that's probably work that I couldn't do. And it takes a lot of talent. So I think that's wonderful. But if you are living elsewhere and you need to make a living and you are okay with actually running a business, then that takes some gearing up. It takes some getting your ducks in a row to actually be able to produce income. And it doesn't happen overnight. You build up a clientele and you market yourself and you make phone calls or you email people and you get your name out there and you become known as a reliable person to work with. And it just goes from there. Right. But it takes time. Like anything, it takes time.
It does. Oh, I know. Of course, I've been doing what I've been doing for 20 years, but if I had to depend on just performing, I wouldn't be able to make it financially.
Yeah.
So I do, I'll do the podcast and I'll go ahead and do school assemblies, and I have a foundation. So I'm pretty busy, but it takes everything to keep things afloat. Let me ask you this. Was there a time in your career when you were really disappointed, whatever that might be, and then actually how did you bounce back and get back on your feet and keep on going forward? Did you go ahead?
Yeah, it's okay. What were you going to ask?
No, I was just going to go ahead and ask you, was there a time in your career, or did something happen when you were extremely disappointed? And then actually, how did you bounce back?
David, I got to tell you, this job is full of disappointment.
I'm starting to feel better now.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't even want to mention how many auditions I do and then hear nothing. I mean, that's just what happens.
Right.
The only way you're going to hear anything from anyone is if you get the job. So, you're going to throw a lot of spaghetti against the wall.
Right. I know.
And you have to sort of come to a position in your own mental health where you understand that you're not going to be for everyone, and you just need to be you. And then if someone wants you for the job, then you get hired.
But the thing of it, right? But it's hard. It's hard not to affect your self-esteem, because when I get rejection or when I get no, I'm thinking, okay, obviously I'm not good enough, or I'm not what they're looking for.
But that's in your own head. That's in your own head, because did they say that you weren't good enough? Did they actually tell you that? Often, no. Yeah. That's not what they said. They just said you're not right for this right now. So I think we have to stop being so cruel to ourselves in our own brains. And I know creatives are really awful with that. And in fact, I had a podcast for a little while called Jodi's Silver Linings that was a 30-episode podcast about how creatives can practice self-care. That was my intro to podcasting. And I had a lot of fun with it. But eventually I moved on to something else. And like any creative, we are awful to ourselves in our own head. We make scenarios that are often completely untrue. And really, the only thing that we can be assured of is that we didn't get that job, but there's more to come.
Right. You were sharing something with me through email, and I can't remember all the details, but I know that you were hired for a job. You did the voiceover, and then when you actually heard it, I don't know if it was on radio or TV, it wasn't your voice.
Oh yeah, that does happen. Certainly it does happen.
So has that happened to you then?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it stings when you hear it, you're thinking, oh, this great commercial's coming out. I'm looking forward to hearing it. And then you hear it and it's someone else's voice. That's never fun. That is never fun. But it happens. And also, the client at the last minute can decide that they want a male voice instead of a female voice. Or, maybe, they know someone who they thought would be a better fit fit, and you just don't get told, So,
right.
But it happened. It stings. It's happened less to me now than it did in the past, but it still happens, and it happens to all of us.
Yeah, and that's happened a few times. When I would I would actually get an artist on to play if it would be guitar or the drums, and I'm thinking that's not really what I'm looking for, so I'll go ahead and bring another one in. And matter of fact, I'll tell you this was actually my first CD that I came out with, and I could say this because my brother doesn't listen to my podcast. So my brother was at one time a really good drummer. And I said, Mike, why don't you come in and let's just lay a drum track for this one song? He said, fine. So anyway, when he was laying the track, I'm thinking, man, this is just not sounding right. I don't know if he was smoking too much weed or whatever, but anyway, it just didn't really gel with me. And I still to this day, I haven't told him that that's not him playing the drums, of course, So anyway, one of the things that I share at the school assemblies, and this was about not giving up, and so many of us we quit too early, and I was just thinking about the other day is that, gosh, if I can know that this podcast is just going to launch off and everything is going to be all right, I would continue to stick out with good enthusiasm and be on the phones and everything else, and but one of the things that I share with the kids is that everything is about making choices, and the easiest choice that we can make when things are not going our way, either at home or in sports or in school, the easiest choice for us to make is to quit. Anybody can quit.
Yeah.
And it's those that keep on getting back up. And it's just like me and you. When you first started your career in voice acting, I'm sure that you got a lot of no's or you didn't get too many jobs, but you kept on going because you loved it. And that's the same thing with me. I get all these no's, but I still... this is what I love to do, and it outweighs all the no's.
Yeah. I don't even get no's. So, I get ignored. That's what happens, right? It's the funny thing. I know there's sometimes I'll go ahead and just spite the person. I'll go ahead and keep on calling them and emailing them until I get an answer, knowing that they're probably not answering. If I did that with agents and people who I did auditions for, I would get a reputation as someone they didn't want to work with. So I do my audition and I forget about it. And that's kind of how a voice talent has to think of it. You do the audition,
right.
Unless you hear anything back, you assume you didn't get it.
Right. Hey, Jodi, I want to go ahead and switch directions real quick.
Sure.
You mentioned that you're, of course, from Canada. What part of Canada did you say?
I'm just north of Toronto, yeah.
Okay. I was doing a little research on bullying in Canada, and I was pretty shocked in what I read. And I'm not for sure if you realize this or not, of course, unless you're dealing with this whole issue. But out of 35 countries, Canada is number 9 with the most bullying in the 13-year-old category. Of course, that's 13 years old is the peak or the age where most kids get bullied. And then it said that in Canada, at least 1 in 3 adolescent students in Canada have reported being bullied recently. Almost 50% of Canadian parents report having a child victim of bullying. And then, let's see, I'm reading down. In regards to Canada, and I'm not sure, and I'm sure that, everywhere else, the most common form of bullying is cyberbullying. And they said that 73% of the victims that are bullied is through cyberbullying. What else? What I was going to say? Oh, of course, we know that, bullying just doesn't happen in schools. I mean, of course, it happens in the workplace. It happens in our communities. And I was pretty shocked about this, but 40% of Canadian workers have experienced bullying in their workplace. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
No, but when you were in school, do you remember ever getting bullied or seeing bullying take place?
Oh my goodness, yes. Oh yeah,
that's a shame.
Yeah, I mean,
tell me, can you go ahead and tell me when actually What grade were you in, and how old were you? And tell us some details about that.
Probably from, I don't know, almost grade 1 on to like almost high school. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, what happens? I mean, I don't know. We can say that we're all individual people, but a school environment does not promote people being individuals. I hate to say that, there are certain teachers who are fantastic and they really get past that and they work on it. But in general, I mean, school, you're supposed to be alike. Everyone is supposed to be exactly the same. And the only way that you don't get picked on is if you conform, So
right.
I have to hand it to the people who are bullied because they didn't conform.
Right. Well, when you were being bullied, was it more of a verbal bullying, or was it physical, or was it like a social bullying?
It was kind of social verbal.
Do you know?
I will say that girls can be, oh my God, so cruel to each other.
Oh yeah.
Like a guy gets bullied, he gets beat up. Okay, yeah. There's a certain amount of verbal that goes with that, but you get in a fight and you hit it out and whatever, right? No,
right.
when girls bully, it's constant. It's constant and it's cruel. And I mean, the same thing happens. Guys, girls, whatever. Bullying is bullying. But girls have a special way about getting under the skin and making it pretty devastating.
Oh, I can't imagine. Did your parents know that you were being bullied, or did you sort of just keep it to yourself?
They kind of knew. By the time I was in junior high, it was kind of hard to avoid.
Right.
But, unfortunately, as much as teachers and parents try to help, it's up to the kids. I hate to say it, but, there's only so much that the parents and the, vice principal or whatever can do for you. They're trying. But
I agree.
But yeah, it's got to be with the kids, because you either have to stick up for yourself or move to a different school or whatever, and deal with it. I don't know how else to put that, because they'll try.
I agree with you.
Yeah, they'll try to help you. But
I'll mention this.
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned this on a few podcasts. They say that out of all the bullying that takes place, 85% of the bullying that takes place, there's no intervention, which means that the kids are pretty much taking it on themselves.
Yeah.
They're dealing with it with themselves.
It doesn't
The parents aren't getting involved, right? The teachers aren't getting involved. But the main reason is that the kids keep it to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I teach jiu-jitsu class, and I've talked with psychiatrists, I talked with counselors, and they say that the best thing for kids to do is to get plugged into different programs that the school has, if it's the chess team, or if it's football, or for basketball,
mm-hmm.
because you build instant relationships. And so when you go through school, you say hi, you sit with them and everything else, and it's just a lot less awkward. But anyway, since you have been bullied for several years, what kind of advice can you give kids that are getting bullied?
I would say the best thing that any kid could do is develop some confidence. And again, jiu-jitsu can help with that. A team sport of some kind, or chess, or whatever they get involved in that is with other people. But self-confidence deters bullies.
Right. Do you agree that, when you're confident as a voice actor, mm-hmm. and if I have confidence as a musician, it shows mm-hmm. in our production. Yeah. It shows when I'm performing, and it shows in your product too, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so let's do this. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you to find out more information about what you do and about your podcast?
Well, my voiceover website is at voiceoversandvocals.com. So spell the AND and it's voiceovers, plural. And my podcast is at audiobrandingpodcast.com. And I just talk about how audio branding is an important part of regular branding.
See, I need to listen to that because I'm in the dark with that. I don't, I guess I should. I guess know about audio branding.
Well, I've talked with musicians. I've talked with a fellow who teaches self-confidence to kids through hip hop, which is, I think, a wonderful way to avoid bullying. Self-confidence, teaching self-confidence, right? And I've spoken to, my latest episode is with Steve Keller, who is the sonic branding director of Pandora. And that was a fascinating discussion. And I've spoken with...
Now, what was that? I'm not interrupting. Yeah. What was that whole podcast about with him?
He is what he calls an audio alchemist. So the really interesting thing is he's like a psychologist and a scientist, and he works with other scientists, and he's an advertising and marketing guy, and he's also a musician, and he loves it all, and he blends it into a knowledge of what moves us with sound that is really unparalleled.
Wow. I need to listen to that. That's for sure.
It's pretty fascinating.
Let's do this. One of the things that I do before we end a show is that I ask you what we call super questions, and you can answer this with short answers, and then we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Okay? You ready for that?
Sure.
Okay. So, what is your definition of success?
Free time.
Free time. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's nice. What's one word that best describes you?
Determined. One could say stubborn, but yeah.
Okay, let me ask you this. What is one of your biggest pet peeves?
Oh, not caring.
This could be with your husband.
Not caring. Someone who just doesn't care about things. Yeah, if someone, doesn't care about something and just tosses it off and doesn't, I don't know. I mean, it's different for everybody, right? What people care about.
No.
But yeah.
Yeah. Let me see. What natural gift would you most like to possess? Now, since you sing, that's probably one of the biggest answers that I get from the people that I interview. They want to be able to sing or play guitar. So that being said, do you have another natural gift that you would like to possess?
Oh, I would love to be able to draw. I'm just not very crafty at all. Right. I just haven't been able to cultivate that in my life. And I would love to have been more talented at that kind of thing. I so admire artists.
Okay, then the last question is this. Who is your favorite band?
I would say right now it's a band called Big Wreck. And there's a reason for that, because the lead singer sounds a lot like Chris Cornell to me. And I love Soundgarden and Audioslave and all of that. And Big Wreck is, they're still touring, but I think the most stuff that I heard from them is 2012, 2014. But I love the mix of sort of alt rock and harmonies. That just gets me right in the heart.
That's nice. Well, that's about all we have for the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. Before we go, I want to let everyone know again how you can help me fight against bullying. Now, one of the ways that you can do this is you can bring awareness against bullying by sharing the show with Jodi Krangle on social media, either through Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram. The second way that you can actually help is if you haven't subscribed to the Bully Resistance Show, it doesn't cost you anything. Just go to my website at www.davebond.org. And then thirdly, you can be a monthly supporter as low as $4 per month, which is just a specialty coffee at Starbucks. And depending on your sponsorship, you can receive either one song of the week or a free CD digital download of the month, depending on your sponsorship. And this way, at least you're not giving money away. So for more information on that, you can just go to my website again at www.davebond.org and then click on the Patreon banner. So until next time, thanks for listening.